Help support the show by going to the Amazon.com search bar on the FBIA podcast webpage when doing your online shopping. From movies to groceries, Amazon has everything. Go to the website and use our show's search box to help send 10% of your purchase to the show. The search box will take you right back to the Amazon webpage. No extra cost to you, just support for the show. Again, that's FBIApodcast.com and look for the search box just under our logo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
And I am Kyle. Today we are joined by Matthew Stanley, writer from boltsfromtheblue.com, the Chargers news and blog page, part of the SB Nation community. Matthew is here with us today to discuss the San Diego Chargers. Today, Matthew, thank you so much for making the time and being with us.
No worries. Thank you guys for having me on.
Since it's the first chance for a lot of people from your page to hear your voice, get to know who you are, let's talk a little bit about yourself first. First thing I want to know is, how long have you been a fan? How did you become a fan of the team?
So I've been a fan pretty much since birth. My mom was born in San Diego at Sharp Hospital, and then 27 years later, I was born in the same hospital. So I grew up a Chargers fan, which my dad is a retired Navy captain, so most of that being a fan was from overseas, trying to follow the team as the internet grew. I remember trying to listen to audio streams of the game in Moscow, Russia, at the embassy at midnight, and then my mom would call excited about something that just happened and kick us off the dial-up internet. So there's been some growing pains, but I've been a fan since birth, and now I'm living here in enemy territory in Denver.
Now, you also have a military connection as well. We had talked a little bit before bringing you on, and Kyle and I are both vets, and we're huge supporters of the military. In fact, we contribute as much as we can to events and stuff like that. Do you want to share any of that with us, or is that a topic you'd rather not? Or
No, sure. I was a drone crew chief in the Army, and got to deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan, and yeah, it's all been part of the fun. It's nice being in the military, because every place you go, there's people from all over. So here in Denver, I'm in the extreme minority, but on any military base, even in Afghanistan, you wear one piece of Chargers gear and you get 5 random people coming up to you saying like, "Yeah, man, go Chargers." So it was definitely a fun experience.
Now, I gotta ask, how did your dad take it when you're like, "No, old man, I am going Army. You go ahead and keep your boats"?
So honestly, and this is going to piss some people off, he was just happy that I didn't join the Air Force. So he was okay with it. He was glad that I chose to go and do something, because at the time I was just working at Pizza Hut and living in their basement. So I think he was kind of happy to see me go out and start doing something.
And I also like that you said, I got to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. I felt the same way. I was happy when I got shipped out. Not the case for a lot of people, but I'm assuming that it was as positive as combat deployment can be, without, getting too much into PTSD or anything like that.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a shock, but I was glad to go. So basically I had finished basic training, and then I finished my year of AIT. And a week after getting back home, I had a little leave. I called my unit and got a hold of my platoon sergeant, and he was like, "Oh, PFC Stanley, good to have you to the unit. So we'll have you come in next week. And full disclosure, in 2 months, we're heading to MOB training and then to Iraq. So welcome to the team." But it was definitely a positive experience. I made some great friends. The guy I shared a shipping container with living over there became one of my best friends, and he's actually who I met my wife through. So it was a very positive experience.
Your wife, who is a Denver Broncos fan.
Yes, she is. She is born and raised Denver, bleeds orange and blue, and it definitely makes for some interesting Sundays during the year.
Do you guys have kids?
No, not yet. We just got married in August. We have a dog, so I guess we have a furry child, but no actual kids yet.
So how are you going to divide up the children's fandom, or is it just you're on one side, she's on the other? You know, who do you trust on this one? You know, let the kids make the choice, or
I think we'll agree to let the kids make the choice, but I'm definitely going to be shady in my tactics of trying to draw them to my
yeah. You can go ahead and go to the Denver game if you want, son. I mean, after all, you know, kidnappers are only 98% of the fan base there. What? Oh, yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I would do the exact same thing. I did have a game where my daughter told me she was rooting against my team, and she's 4, so she doesn't even know what's going on, and I still kicked her out of the room.
Yeah, so. I think there might be some Sundays like that.
Just be like, hey, you know that only girls are Broncos fans, right? I mean, your mom's a Broncos fan. I mean, that'll work if you have a son. I guess not really if you have a daughter. I didn't really think that one through, I guess.
Yeah, it'll definitely be, pouring some honey in the ear to get them to join my cause.
That is the only way to keep your head above water. We got to move on a little.
Sure.
What is it that drove you to become a professional in the fact that you are writing for this website? You're with responsibility now. Obviously, you're on the show with us. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that stuff like, having to be in Moscow at midnight listening to the game, you got a feel for having to go out of your way to get the information. Did that help? What is the motivation here for you?
Well, I just felt that I had more to contribute than just being a fan. I spent years being a constant poster in some forums for the Chargers, and most of my feedback was pretty well received. And then I had the opportunity to start writing for one website a few years ago, and then I got deployed to Afghanistan and didn't really have a lot of time, I had plenty of time over there, but I didn't have a good internet connection to be able to try and do everything that I was trying to do. But then I got the opportunity to sign up for to apply to SB Nation and to the Bolts from the Blue blog, and they accepted me, and it's a great team. We have some great discussions, both football and non-football, and it was just something that I felt that I had more to contribute than just posting on Twitter every couple of hours.
And with your entire life of being a fan, what is your strongest memory? Good, bad, neutral, Moscow embassy kind of stuff, what have you? What is the thing that is the most vivid memory of you being a Charger fan?
So my funniest, it's the funniest because I like being a funny guy. I like comedy. So
we're already on board.
In 2009, the Chargers were playing the Cincinnati Bengals. It was coming up near the end of the season. We had a good win streak going. I think we had won 6 or 7 games in a row at that point. And I was in Iraq, and the MWR, basically the place on the base where people could go play Xbox and pool and stuff, they had AFN and they were showing the game, but their AFN went out in the first quarter. So I ran over to the gym, which was the only other place on base that had TVs that had AFN. And I didn't want to just be that guy standing in the gym watching football. So I grabbed the nearest treadmill and just started walking. And I got so into the game that I walked for the entire game, including halftime. And 2.5 hours later, I looked down and I had walked almost 8 miles, and I had a PT test the next morning. And it was probably one of the poor decisions I've ever made, but it was such a good game. The Bengals came back in the fourth quarter and tied it up, and we had to go make a game-winning drive. So I just got so sucked in that I just walked on this treadmill for far too long.
And see, that's interesting because most people, when they come on, they're like, oh, well, I remember going to the game with my dad or my grandpa, or, I remember this season being really great. Like yours is just, I was just happened to be watching a game and I ended up walking for 8 miles on a treadmill.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting memory.
You gotta love the mentality of, hey, you're in a combat zone. with an irregular schedule, but we got to make sure that you're physically fit enough. It's like, dude, I'm getting shot at. Go away.
Yeah, well, there's more ridiculous things that I could get into, like wearing reflective belts all hours of the day, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, I almost got shot on my base because of a reflective belt.
Oh, so, we have so much to talk about after the show. All right, so let's get into what happened last year. Tough year for the Chargers and for their fans. It started with a loss to what ended up being the surprise Cardinals of the year, but after that, the season was kind of like a dream for everybody involved. A nightmare if you're not a Chargers fan, but if you are, it was great. But then you lose to the Chiefs, and then you lose to the Broncos, and quickly you were 0-2 in the division. Then came what seemed to be kind of the bat to the knees, which is the Dolphins shutout. And after that, they had a decent rebound after the bye week, but they still only went 2-4 in the division, with the Raiders being the usual punching bag. There was a lot of really great things about the team that we saw, but injuries ended up playing a real big part of the down parts. And it just seemed the team seemed to decline. And lead us through your thought process. Was this team in any way, shape, or form a success? And if not, can you point out the smaller successes to make all your fans feel happy about?
So yeah, last year was rough. We had Danny Woodhead got injured early, and he had been such a key part of the offense the year before. He was kind of that safety net that Rivers had, and he just provided some really good explosion. And right off the bat, he goes down. And then I think we were the first team in NFL history to go through the whole season with starting 5 different centers. We just couldn't keep a center healthy. And that obviously hurts the quarterback, because you got to have that. That's probably one of the stronger connections on the team, is a quarterback and his center. And so injuries were definitely a key part. But also there's some players that just haven't been contributing that I know I'd skip ahead to this offseason a little bit, that are gone now, that are going to make a lot of people happy. And Marcus Gilchrist and Sharice Wright in our secondary. And that they were a big part of the reason we lost to the Dolphins the way we did. Their tight end just absolutely had his way with anyone we had on him, but especially Marcus Gilchrist. So there was definitely some bright spots. Before he got hurt, Jason Verrett, our first round pick last year, or the corner, he did very well. That's definitely something to look forward to. And he's fully healthy now. And so that'll be really nice to pair up with Brandon Flowers, who we also just re-signed. And I think even though it wasn't to the level of production from the year before, Rivers still had a very good year. He's pretty consistent. He did have a few more turnovers than the year before, but it was a semi-new offense with Frank Reich taking over. And like I said, he didn't have his safety net. He didn't have Danny Woodhead, and our wide receivers were in and out with injury. Keenan Allen was injured a little bit on and off the whole year. Ryan Matthews obviously was injured again, and we ended up starting an undrafted free agent running back in Brandon Oliver, who did well for 2 games and then kind of fell off again. So there was, I mean, like you said, there was definitely ups and downs, but there's definitely stuff to build upon. A lot of our rookies looked pretty good, even though they didn't play as much as a lot of fans would have hoped.
Now, when you get constant 9-7, 7-9, 8-8, it definitely raises questions. There was a great deal of optimism when head coach Mike McCoy was brought in, and I'm assuming there was at least some optimism for GM Tom Telesco, but right now there's not really that jump that I would assume the fans feel is needed to really become a contender. Are we getting to any scenario in which either of these guys are starting to feel a little bit unsure about job security? Are they on the hot seat in any way?
I don't think they are. People are quick to judge, in my opinion. Tom Telesco was kind of handicapped when he first came in because of the cap situation he inherited. And so this was the first real offseason that he had money to play with, and he made some very good signings. He kept the top free agent left tackle in King Dunlap this year. He re-signed him. He kept one of the top 3 corners and re-signed Brandon Flowers. And then he brought in the top left guard on the free agent market in Orlando Franklin. And he made some very good signings. He didn't make any big splash signings like Ndamukong Suh, even though there was rumors that the Chargers were in the hunt for a couple of those big names. But I don't see the need for us to for the Chargers to go grab a player like that. That's the kind of player you go grab when you're maybe 1 or 2 players away from being a Super Bowl team. And the Chargers had more holes than that to fill. So I thought it was a very good approach what Telesco did in this offseason. And Mike McCoy, my biggest criticism of him is the same criticism that I guess kind of got John Fox in bad favor here in Denver, is that he's a little too conservative sometimes. We did win the 49ers game near the end of last season, going for it on 4th down a couple times during the game, but that was probably the one game all of last year where we saw a little bit of aggressive play calling like that. He does tend to play it a little too conservatively for most people, but I think at this point the Chargers have a quarterback who can make a Super Bowl run, and he just hasn't had an offensive line worthy of even a mid-tier quarterback. He hasn't had time. He doesn't have protection. They couldn't open up holes for the run game to take some pressure off of him. And I think that bringing in Orlando Franklin and probably adding another guy here in the draft, it's going to be night and day knock on wood, barring injury, it'll be night and day difference from the line he had to work with last year.
Definitely have to be pretty happy with Tom Telesco at least retaining, like you said, your left tackle. When we saw the numbers on that, and I don't remember exactly how much he got paid, but the reaction for both Ron and myself was, wait a minute. That guy's good. Why did he take so little money? I don't know how he did that, but that was one hell of a signing. Tom Telesco, obviously coming from the Colts, he cut his teeth under Bill Polian before Bill started letting his son ruin the Colts for a little while there. As a Colts fan, I am not a fan of Chris Polian, but, it is what it is. But Tom Telesco is probably going to have this franchise moving in a good direction for some time. Now let's talk a little bit about this upcoming year and some of the concerns on the horizon. Obviously, the big one is Phillip Rivers and his longevity with the team. Now, the way I remember reading this, and I could have gotten bad information, you're clearly going to know more about this than I am, but he says he's going to play out his contract and doesn't see anything having him re-sign with the team. Now, there's gas in the tank. I mean, from weeks 2 to 6, he was the first NFL player to ever have a passer rating over 25 consecutive games. So, I mean, there's a lot of talent for him. And like you said, with the line improving, that's a great thing. But this has got to have Charger fans worried. Why is this happening to the Chargers right now?
So I think it has a lot to do with the stadium situation. A lot of reporters have been asking him his feelings on moving to LA, and he is very obviously against moving to LA in any way, shape, or form. And so he's kind of, in my opinion, frustrated with the whole situation and really against the idea of moving to LA. And a lot of people's takes, including my own, is that's the reason why he's playing it the way he is he does not want to play in LA, but he also isn't the kind of guy who's going to demand a trade. Even if this is his last year with the Chargers and he plays out his contract, he's going to give the team everything he's got right now. A lot of people think that this is just kind of smoke and mirrors. I don't see Rivers playing those kind of games. He's too honest of a guy. I mean, obviously everyone outside of San Diego calls him a big crybaby, but he obviously has no problem telling people how he feels. So I don't see him playing those kind of games. I think if the stadium situation resolves itself and the Chargers are staying in San Diego, I think Phillip Rivers stays with the team and re-signs and retires a Charger. The only way that he's leaving this team is either he's going to retire because the team is moving to LA and franchise tags him, or he leaves the team because they don't franchise tag him and they're moving to LA.
It's probably something where we're going to see him back. I could easily see it being like you're saying, expressing his displeasure about the possible LA move. It could be maybe just angling for a little more money in the contract. It could be any number of things, but at the very least, a GM and a head coach and an owner have to be ready to start looking ahead when you start hearing this talk. So, I mean, what would be the plan there? Is a guy going to be drafted? Is the team just going to hurl money at him and hope that it works? Is it even time to move on?
I think they're definitely making it look like that. The Chargers are bringing Marcus Mariota in for a private workout on April 15th. They've also met privately with the CSU quarterback and one other quarterback. I didn't write the team down on my notes here, but they've already met with 2 quarterbacks in this draft, and they're bringing Marcus Mariota in for a private workout, and that's definitely added to the feeling that the team is ready to move on, because I mean that your time leading up to the draft is precious. You don't just waste your scouts and GM's time, looking at these guys and having them work out for you if you're not at least mildly interested. And that's one of the scenarios that a lot of people are talking about, is a possible draft day trade with someone like the Tennessee Titans, moving up and sending either Rivers and some picks, or just Rivers for that second overall pick, or kind of like they did with Rivers and Eli, and just trading Phillip Rivers for the rights to Marcus Mariota, who they just drafted. So those are the scenarios that we've all been seeing.
Yeah, actually, this is something that I proposed a while back, and Kyle was like, "Oh, I don't know." Actually, we had talked with the Titans editor, which was Jimmy Morris, for his explanation page, and he said it would be a good fit, with Ken Wisenhunt, and I think he calls him the Wiz. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Kyle isn't real big on teams trading franchise quarterbacks and for what they're worth. It just doesn't make sense in his mind. For me, it does. We differ on this point. A lot of people don't seem to agree with the fact that you could get what you would need for him.
Yeah, I've been seeing that same thing, that some of the proposed trades just blow my mind. I mean, obviously, being a Chargers fan, I'm a little biased, but I've been seeing Titans fans posting, well, we'll trade for him, but only if the Chargers are willing to send Rivers their first-round pick this year and their first-round pick next year. That's not happening. So it would have to be for I think our editor, John Gennaro, put it perfectly, that it would have to be for a Godfather, make you a deal you can't refuse type deal that would even have Tom Telesco seriously consider it.
Now, I did take a look on your guys' webpage, and I did see the poll, should the team trade Phillip Rivers? And 68% of your fans said no, and the comments were beautiful. There was some angst and some hate. And I will say it goes both ways. There are some Titan fans who are going to say, you need to give us a king's ransom, and there are some Charger fans who are saying, like, if we don't get 3 first-round picks, I don't even want to hear about it. Neither of those things are happening. We're going to take a brief moment to recognize just one of your commenters. Massive, massive, massive props to Bolt Up 23 for using the term clipboard Jesus in reference to Charlie Whitehurst.
That is his nickname here in San Diego. Everyone I know calls him Clipboard Jesus.
That's outstanding, by the way. When
yes.
we actually just discovered that pretty much right before we brought you on, and Kyle and I had a nice chuckle about that at length.
Yeah, that is definitely the perfect nickname for him.
But what I'm seeing with a lot of this trade talk is there's no common ground, and while it could be beneficial to both teams, nobody's going to just be willing to give up the number 2 overall for one guy. It's hard to say, but could you see something being done for maybe Phillip Rivers and the first round either this year or next year, or would Chargers fans just be totally outraged with that possibility?
Well, here, one thing, let me jump in here real quick, Kyle. I'm sorry. One thing that I was considering, or what my thought process on this is that you're in a division and you have the Broncos. Now, we don't know what the total overall health status is of Peyton Manning. I believe that he can only get worse from here, so you have a definite shot when it comes to them. The Chiefs are the most boring team in the world. It's like watching a 3-year-old play with popsicle sticks. And at this point, you have the the best shot kind of this year and the way that it looks. So I wouldn't think that they'd want to give up the opportunity to attack a Super Bowl run. But in the event that come out of the gate in the first 5 weeks, Broncos are 5-0 and Peyton Manning looks outstanding, and a team is still saying, you know what? And Phillip Rivers is playing well, and a team says, we'll give you your 2 first-round picks and we'll give you a conditional pick for that third year. And you say, okay, yeah, we'll play out the rest of the year. We're probably not going to have better than a 7-9, 8-8 season. And you guys roll into next year, get your guy, and now you have a bunch of picks that you can either trade down and make into more picks, or you have really good value picks in the next few years, and you could really start rebuilding there. I mean, if you look at the long term in that, is that something that fans you think would get behind?
I don't think that's something the fans would get behind, only if the team is staying in San Diego. I think that like the stadium issue it plays a lot in this, and that if the team is moving to LA, a lot of the Chargers fans are already going to say good riddance, and so they're not going to care, and it'll be one of those it's easier to say goodbye because I'm mad kind of thing. And it makes a lot of sense for the Chargers to do that too, because they need to go win over that new market. There was an LA Times poll that asked the local people there in LA what team would they like to see come up there, and the Rams and Raiders destroyed the Chargers in that poll. I think the Chargers didn't even get 10% of the responses in that poll. And so even though the team has come out and said 25% of their fans come from that area, I think that they're going to need, a new fresh face that's not already associated with the old San Diego Chargers, that it would make a lot of sense for them to bring in someone new and say, okay, we're going to build this fresh new team up here, bringing in someone like Marcus Mariota, who played in Oregon and played a lot of those West Coast teams. It's a name that people recognize. It's a name that would excite a fan base up there. And so that definitely would make sense. And even going into next year, there's some, in my opinion, next year's quarterback class is going to be a lot better. And it would definitely make sense long term to do something like that. But I think if the team is staying in San Diego and the Chargers, the Chargers would bring back Phillip Rivers and not try and auction him off for a king's ransom. I think he's still got a few good years left in him. He is a little bit older, but he spent the first few seasons on the bench not actually playing because the Chargers had Drew Brees out there. So he's not like, Eli Manning and Ben Roethlisberger both started from day one, and they've got 2 more seasons worth of getting sacked and getting hit under their belt. Rivers, even though he had the back injury last year, is relatively fresher. So I think he's still got some time.
And it could just very well be that all this team to LA talk, in my mind, when a team says we're moving to LA and it's kind of come just out of the blue and there's the quick presser and then not a whole lot else, to me that just says we want a new stadium and we're going to threaten LA against our current city until we start sitting down and talking new stadium. So at least for me, I kind of see the Chargers staying put. I come from the LA area originally. People do not care about football there. They would not be excited to have the Chargers any more than they would the Rams or the Raiders or anybody for that matter. It's better for the team to stay put.
I agree with that our general staff consensus over at Bolts from the Blue is that the team is going to stay, in large part because of what you just said, but also because the Rams they're almost shovel ready at this point. They can go in and start day one. They can be playing there in the next year and a half in their shiny new stadium. And the Carson project is just, it's so far behind in terms of logistics that the NFL owners would really have to be pretty convinced. They would have to see some serious numbers that would convince them that it's worth it to tell Stan Kroenke no and let the Chargers and whoever they share a stadium with proceed.
It seemed really ridiculous, like really division rivals in the same stadium. It works in New York or New Jersey, if you want to be correct about it, because they're from an entirely different conference. But to have the Raiders and the Chargers, it's like, okay, so then there's 2 games a year where they're playing each other at the same place. And
well, I think the thought process there would be that one team would go to the NFC West and they would take either the Rams or the Cardinals from the NFC West and make them an AFC West team.
No, you need to take the Seahawks. Take the Seahawks. Take them.
They would. That would be a really interesting rivalry to see the Seahawks and Broncos in the same division, because their fan bases already hate each other so much after that Super Bowl.
All right, well, hey, we're gonna end up pushing time if we don't kind of scoot this along here. So
sure.
let's force you to start talking about some free agent signings and kind of what's happening personnel wise. Few of the more notable ones were Patrick Robinson, Mitch Unryan, Orlando Franklin. You guys went after the division players quite a bit, and then you went out and got yourself another wide receiver, Stevie Johnson, and the big one you kind of touched on it earlier was the King Dunlap signing and making sure that he stayed off the market, and I thought that was one of the better signings of the year when it came to offensive line. Can you kind of give us some insight on why they didn't attack the running back position and why they seem to be actually kind of quiet in the free agency world when there was a lot of kind of really high profile guys out there? They kind of seem to stay in that tier 2, tier 3 range.
I think I'll do the running back thing first. So this is a pretty deep draft for running backs, in my opinion. And I think that Tom Telesco and his staff know that. And so there wasn't a real rush to go out and sign, a DeMarco Murray or, and we're trying to stay away from guys with injury history. So, that took CJ Spiller off the board. And I agreed with how they played that. I didn't think it was a huge need to go that they needed to throw a lot of money at. And when you can go grab a running back in this draft, that's going to be a lot cheaper. Even if you take one in the first round, it's going to be cheaper than what the ransom that the Eagles paid for DeMarco Murray. So I like how they played that. And as far as grabbing Unrein and Franklin they were great signings. I really like Unrein. He's a real good, really strong effort guy. I was talking to one of my friends here who's a Broncos fan, and he was pretty pissed that the Broncos didn't bring him back. So I think that'll be good for our defensive line, because that's another position that the Chargers have faced some depth issues with injuries. So he's a solid guy to bring in there. Patrick Robinson, I heard from a lot of Saints fans. I've got a really good friend from high school who's a big Saints fan, and he was also upset that he left, because he said that a lot of the time when he got burned, it was because he was got left on an island because the rest of the Saints secondary was playing so poorly. So he said that'll be a good signing to come, shore some things up for us.
Well, and also with your GM being a disciple of Bill Polian, you're just not going to see big time signings. You're going to see quality signings for players to add to depth, nothing to break the bank, and building through the draft, which is a good thing. I would like to ask very quickly if there is any faith left for Donald Brown and also for Dwight Freeney. I'm a Colts fan. I'm interested. Are they doing anything? Because it seems like they went to San Diego and disappeared.
So Dwight Freeney is a free agent, and the Chargers already said they're not going to bring him back. That experiment kind of played itself out. And yeah,
I wasn't even aware that he was on the field, to be honest with you, the past couple years.
Yeah, he got good grades from sites like Pro Football Focus because he got a lot of quote unquote quarterback hurries, but he didn't have a true impact. And in my opinion, the big reason he saw the field is because we had injuries at the position. And the Chargers didn't have anyone else who could rush the passer. So he was out there, and that experiment has now played its course.
And he was a defensive end, too. Like, he's not a true outside linebacker.
Yeah.
He was a converted defensive end to outside linebacker.
Right.
And he decided to stick with it. I don't know if it was because he liked it or what. Kyle, we've discussed this a couple of times, but to me, it would have been smarter if he wanted to continue his career to go back to a 4-3 style.
I would agree with that. I think he had a better chance. He would have had a better chance playing with his hand in the dirt more often and having more bodies to help him out up there and not have to worry about, chasing a running back out to the flats.
Now, let's get into a little bit of the draft stuff. You have some positions of need, the biggest being offensive line, linebacker, and we've already discussed the running back. Defensive line needs some tweaking, and you guys could definitely use like a big possession wide receiver guy that could really play the sideline well. The Chargers, they're going to have to make a lot of decisions when it comes to the draft. They have to decide if DJ Fluker is going to be the guy at right tackle to keep putting up against speed rushers, or if maybe they're going to move him inside the guard. That has been kind of a rumor. There's a definite glaring hole with the running back and obviously the linebacker depth. That one, when I looked at that, it just seemed like, Jared Johnson retires and you guys just don't seem to have a lot there talent-wise. So what is the thought process that you have? What is your opinion on where they need to go first in the draft? And on top of that, kind of caveat off of it, what do the fans want? What are their biggest thing they want? What do they want to see fixed the most through the draft?
So the two names that the fans are throwing out the most are Danny Shelton at nose tackle. The team has missed a Jamal Williams type, just monster in the middle, and the fans are pretty convinced that he can be that. I'm not so convinced that he can be that all the time, but that's who they seem to love. The fans also seem to really love the two top running backs, Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley. It's kind of split 50-50, but I see a lot of people calling for drafting a running back at 17. Talking with the rest of the staff at BFTB, we're all pretty convinced that outside linebacker, one of these edge guys, should be the pick at 17. Whether that's, Bud Dupree falling, or now with Gregory failing that drug test, he's going to slip a little bit. I think that would be the pick to go because, like you said, it's pretty thin out there, and the Chargers definitely need some help. The Chargers do need some offensive line help, but it is, in my opinion, there are guys to be had in the second and third round that can come in and start at either tackle or guard for the Chargers. So, and with how the team views Fluker right now, that could go either way. It would be kind of a best player available type situation where if the best player available is a right tackle, they grab a right tackle and shift Fluker into guard. If there's a guard they fall in love with, they take the guard and hope that Fluker can improve his footwork and do better on the outside. And I think that's pretty possible. He did seem to play a lot better on the edge when he had a better guard next to him. When Jeremy Clary was in there playing guard, he performed a lot better than this last season when Johnny Troutman and the rookie Chris Watt were next to him. So I think that could go either way.
Is that somebody you think that could convert to guard real well? I mean, he's a pretty big dude.
He is a very big guy. He's very strong, and he's the kind of guy that he just loves contact. He has the mentality to play guard. He's just nasty and just wants to beat you up. One of the favorite gifs among Charger fans and is the gif against in his rookie year, the Chargers played the Raiders, and their rookie linebacker C.O. Moore came in, and DJ Fluker pretty much Undertaker choke slammed him on the field, and it was just one of the most glorious things I've ever seen. And he definitely that would in my opinion,
I am looking that up right now.
It translates very well to the mentality a guard needs.
Now let's go over some of the hopes the fans have after we know what they want in the draft. Let's go over some of what they think is the realistic expectation for this team to go into the playoffs, contend for a Super Bowl. What are your thoughts fan wise? What do the fans feel before we get all of your take and I release Kyle on you? What is the fan perception, and do they think right now, looking at their team, yeah, we have a real good shot, or is it kind of a maybe yes, maybe no kind of deal?
We've been seeing a lot of the sky is falling fans that especially on Twitter, not so much in our comments, but a lot of time on Twitter, because Tom Telesco didn't go out and make these splash signings in free agency. People are moving for a vote of no confidence in his abilities, and that the team is going to be awful again, and they're going to come in third place in the division, and it's going to be back to where we were years ago. And so there's a lot of that. There are some fans, especially in our comments, that are a little more optimistic. They see that with Frank Reich having his second year now, with Phillip Rivers in the system, with Danny Woodhead coming back, with having a better offensive line, and with adding a few key pieces in the draft, this is a team that can go in and compete. And again, knock on wood, barring any injuries, be a team that can give the Broncos a run for their money and try and push for a Super Bowl, which obviously would really help the stadium situation. If the Chargers can go all the way this year, that gives the city and the team all the incentive in the world to stay with a extremely energized fan base. I mean, we all saw what happened with the Seahawks. They had almost no fans, and then they win a Super Bowl, and the 12th man is suddenly a thing now. So I think a lot of fans are cautiously optimistic that something like that could happen.
Well, as you said, improving the line will be a great thing for Phillip Rivers. It's a tough year. There's some pretty good competition in the schedule. Not a lot of games against teams that performed very poorly. Cleveland's a team that maybe there's not a lot of fear. Chicago's on the mend, but they didn't do so well. Detroit lost some players. Oakland's obviously Oakland, but for a lot of the competition, it is tough. So there's definitely going to be a need to play top-tier football. I normally don't weigh in on the seasons and the successes of other teams. I don't think I could say that I have the faith in the Chargers to make the Super Bowl. Even though the AFC is greatly diminished, this is an outsider's perspective, so treat it as blasphemy if you will, but the last time the Chargers were super duper dominant was, I believe, 2009, going 13-3. And really, the last string of dominance of true total wrecking the conference dominance was with LaDainian Tomlinson.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it. Which, it could be good if there's a running back to be had and improve the run game again. That could be a big, big boost.
Yeah, I agree that a running back, a bell cow running back is definitely a key. But part of the reason that team back then was so dominant as well is it was a much more balanced team. The Chargers have not had a very good defense the last couple of years, and some of the blame has to lie with John Pagano, the defensive coordinator, but they haven't had the talent that they had back then. The Chargers had some awesome linebackers back then, and the Chargers, they haven't really had a recognizable name at the linebacker position really since Sean Merriman left. And so it'll definitely be a different team if someone can, if Donald Butler can step up and play up to the massive contract they just gave him after the extremely disappointing year last year. I think that would go a huge way to helping this team win some of these games rather than just having to rely on outscoring them and hoping that they can control the clock.
Okay, so we're pushing time here, so we're going to have to start wrapping up. But what
Sure.
we want to do is we want to open up the floor for you. Go ahead and plug whatever you want to plug. Apologize to your wife now so that she gets this at least when she's done listening, and give us your Twitter, the page, anything you want to fill us in on. Maybe we didn't cover something.
Sure. So like you guys have said, I'm a writer for Bolts from the Blue. It's boltsfromtheblue.com. You can follow on Twitter at BFTB_Chargers. My Twitter handle is @BoltFan in Denver. You can follow me. I'm always on Twitter too much if you ask my wife, so I'm always available to ask questions. Yes, apologies to my wife for talking a little smack, and apologies to my editor, John. I know he's going to get on me because I said we far too much when talking about the Chargers today.
Oh, he's one of those that doesn't like that?
Oh, they hate it. I get crap all the time when we're talking, so I apologize in advance, John. But I think really the only other thing left to be said is I have some optimism for this year. I'm really looking forward to the draft. The draft is something I get really excited about. And so I'm kind of glad that we're getting to that time of year, and it's going to be good to see who they decide is that position of need. It'll be something really interesting to see over the next month. I guess we're about a month out from the draft now, so.
Well, we're definitely going to have you on then during at least the first round, get that initial reaction from you. We will definitely entertain any and all tweets regarding mocking the other teams in your division or anywhere. I mean, why not? We are
no worries.
We are way too happy when people are going to talk smack. Way too happy.
I guarantee you the Raiders will find some way to mess up that pick at 4, and it will be really fun to to see everyone's reaction on Twitter when they just come out of left field and take someone like Philip Dorsett in the first round just because he's fast.
You think that'll still happen even though Al Davis is gone now? Because it seems like Mark Davis, although he doesn't always have his head on straight, seems to be a little bit more down to earth than his dad was, at least live in some form of reality.
Man. Look at that haircut.
Well, look at that haircut. Look at the haircut and look what they did in free agency. They
nothing.
They brought in a bunch of no ones and paid all this money for absolutely nothing. It was
only the Raiders can take the back with the second lowest yards per carry, get rid of him, and replace him with the back with the absolute lowest yards per carry. Trent Richardson, I'm so happy you're off of my team.
Oh, I bet you were dancing when that happened.
I no, at that point it was just like hearing that Nana finally succumbed to cancer. You're like, well, that's awful, but you know what? We're in a better place. We're all in a better place. I imagine, however, that Chargers. What? That's an appropriate reaction. I didn't mention Tom Brady at all. I have to imagine that Charger fans were rolling laughing when they read that.
Oh God! Between that and just seeing the pure numbers, seeing they had, I think, the second or third most cap space going into the offseason. And I think at this point the Chargers actually might have more cap space left over, and the Raiders signed no one. Absolutely no one.
Yeah.
And it was just it's just hilarious to see the continued ineptitude up the road in Oakland.
Well, I mean, we were disappointed, like you said. We thought they should have done better. They actually have a guy who could be a decent quarterback, but it's the Raiders.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Matthew. We really, really appreciate it. And we are humbled, I guess is the best way to put it, by all the participation we've had from not just you, but from everybody. And make sure you give John some thanks for posting the tweet I put out up. We were really afraid we weren't going to get anybody for the Chargers, and it kind of seems as we climb this ladder into the teams that were more closer to the Super Bowl and into the playoffs and stuff like that, we are getting less and less response, and like all the bad teams, people were like, yeah, sure, we'll come on the show and talk about how horrible our team was. But now that we're getting up there, people are tending to take a while to respond. So I really appreciate you getting back to us and volunteering to come on.
Yeah, no worries. I'm always happy to talk football, and this is only the second podcast I've done, but I'm more than happy to get on anytime with you guys and talk some football.
Well, you're our contact now. You're our Chargers contact. So you're going to be the one, you're going to get tweets from me. It's going to be like, what did you think about this? And you're going to be like, man, this guy will not leave me alone.
No, so. I am always on Twitter, and I don't get responses often enough. So rather than me rambling, it would be nice to have a point to me tweeting. So
outstanding. So, well, thanks so much. We're going to wrap up here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much for having me on.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Once again, that was Matthew Stanley, writer from boltsfromtheblue.com. It was fun to talk to another vet and get some good information about a team that I did not know nearly enough about.
Yeah, the Chargers seem to kind of fall under the radar quite a bit. It seems like they've been a relatively popular team over the last few years, but for some reason, it just seems like when it comes to news and updates and, the media in general, they just don't talk about anything outside of their running back position and Phillip Rivers.
And Phillip Rivers doesn't even swear. That's not how you make headlines.
Many people forget that, I think Manti Te'o is on that team, isn't he not?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, see? That's what I'm trying to say. We didn't even broach that subject with him, and that's what I'm trying to say. They stay out of the limelight so well, and they're almost, I wouldn't say forgettable, but they're under the radar a lot.
You know what, though? In week 2 of last week, they beat the hell out of the Seahawks, didn't they?
Well, they didn't beat the hell out of them. They just kind of figured out a formula to beat them.
When you beat the Seahawks, you beat the hell out of them. That's how you always say it. So that way, when Seahawks fans can go ahead and do it, you can just argue like a jackass. Nope, beat the hell out of you. Worst loss in 50 years. Shamed you. Shamed you all. Seppuku for everyone.
Yeah.
I do think of the Chargers as that team where anytime there's a team that I hate, they're playing the Chargers. I'm like, good. Phillip Rivers will go ahead and take care of this. Good. Yes, good. And then I find out now that not only does he not swear, but the closest he comes to it is saying golly, and that he sings the rosary in the shower.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't find out through any lascivious means. That was a YouTube video. A YouTube video about an interview. Again, not lascivious means. It was a YouTube video where they asked his wife in a center questions about who knew him more, and it was awful because neither of them knew anything, and his answers were kind of boring. Be like, hey, Philip, what bothers you? Oh, when there's a mess in the house. Okay.
I mean, when you have 7 kids, I mean,
He has 7 kids?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Because he's a good, God-fearing Christian guy from the
he's
South.
super duper Catholic. I didn't even know that Southerners came in Catholic flavor. I thought it was all just variations on Baptist and, like, shouting.
It's
Because I can't offend people.
Joke.
I was about to make a terrible joke, and then I realized I have no idea what the main fan base of the Chargers is, so I don't want to just, you sit there and you just light immigrants on fire. I don't want to say that. That's more of a hobby than a thing for just Southerners to do. We all enjoy the occasional hobo fire. Why not? Now is probably the greatest time to talk about us, don't you think, Ron?
No. What we're going to do is just thank Matt for coming on the show. It was real awesome for him to do so, and we can't wait to have him back on eventually, probably in a much more limited capacity, I would think. So for all those Bolts from the Blue fans, thank you so much for joining us and checking us out. Also, tuning in for Matt. He is your guy, and that is the best support that you can give him. Check out our show, the regular episodes. We put them out weekly. FBIApodcast.com, footballisamericapodcast.com. We're slowly transitioning to a new website via WordPress. So you can go on there, comment, email, all those places available. You can go on all the social medias. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Reddit, all of those places. You can go on there and submit whatever horrible comments or, dislikes, displeasures, anything that you want to do. Or, if you actually want to give us something positive, that would be great because we rarely get that at all.
Yeah, we're not used to that, so it would actually probably really be confusing. Make sure to check out our proper show on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Pocket Cast. Basically, if there's a medium for having a podcast, we're already there. So give us a chance. We'll probably make you laugh, maybe make you hate life. I don't know. I have a gift. We're probably not going to make fun of the Chargers. As established, it's really easy to forget about the negative aspects of the team for us, so it's really hard for us to come in and spit venom at your team. So you're essentially getting off easy. I don't know if that's good for some of you or bad for some of you. Check us out. Why not? As Ron said, the best way for you to support your guy is to listen to us. I didn't understand what he meant by that, but I chose to stay silent. It worked out. Hey, come for that hard-hitting level of journalism you know and love. From a couple of guys who are quite possibly drunk when they do it. Well, anyway, Ron will be drunk. I don't drink the alcohol.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, we're going to wrap up. So thanks for joining us. Check us out on iTunes. Download our show.
Especially all of the military, especially if you are Navy in San Diego. Thank you for that. Stay out of Mexico or Mexico. It turns out they're the same thing. Don't go there.
What?
Yeah.
All right.
I know, right? Confusing.
Have a good night, everybody.
Take care.